And so when I heard you sharing, I was very excited in my spirit, and I knew that I had to have you come on the program and share with the people. Can you just share with us a little bit about your background and what really brought you into this stream of researching Planet X and so forth?
Well, my search, I read an article years ago, what's up to 4 times as large as Jupiter is so controversial that many astronomers don't know much about it, and is the most high-concept conspiracy theory in existence. And, of course, that was an article about Planet X. So with a personal background in investigative research, when I first heard of it, the concept interested me. I realized that close to 1 million of people a month were searching for answers on Google, and I believe it was the most popular topic, and still is, to date, on YouTube. So I heard an episode on the J.R. Moore National Radio Talk Show where he had spoken with some top naval brass retired, and they'd indicated the reason they had moved to the Ozarks was for safety. Then I ran across a video on YouTube, a 15-minute interview with an insider, codename Arizona. He'd actually seen Planet X through the Hubble. I believe the title of the video was The Red Devil Planet Revisited. I also noted some Russian TV news programs about Planet X. And the Russians, as you know, believe the object exists, is inbound, and they've built massive shelters, some of them up to 200,000 people on the side of a mountain in the Urals and throughout the country in preparation. And then you had the mysterious death, allegedly by fast-acting throat cancer, of Dr. Robert Harrington, the chief astronomer of the U.S. Naval Observatory, when he was right on the verge of going public. That all added fuel to the fire. So one of the topics in which I got some straight A's in the university was astronomy. I found the subject captivating. I entered upon a several-year-long pursuit of knowledge, and after completing my research, I wrote a book entitled Planet X, the 2017 Arrival by David Mead. And it discusses, of course, how Planet X will potentially cause extreme destruction. And the question is, to what extent and how soon is this object headed to the Earth? Now, Dr. Harrington, the chief astronomer for the Naval Observatory, died before he could publicize the fact that Planet X is approaching our solar system. So I feel his death is part of a cover-up. My father-in-law, in fact, or not my father-in-law, but my stepfather, rather, took the JFK autopsy photos, and I lived outside Washington for quite a while, and I worked at the Pentagon, so I pretty much know how things operate up there, and I think it's best always to stay under the radar, so to speak, and keep your beliefs to yourself. What does the Bible say? A fool utters all his mind. And the Bible also, I think, even says something like, if any man is ignorant, let him remain ignorant. So in terms of the type of people I used to work with, as far as they knew, I never knew anything, and I don't know anything. But I do have a tremendous amount of archival material, proprietary photos, proprietary videos, and so forth that I've accumulated on Planet X. I believe you could take a trial lawyer and you could go into court and you could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it exists based on 3 things: historical records, number 2, modern observations, number 3, Bible prophecy. You mentioned Revelation chapter 6 and verses 12 to 17 probably, the 6th seal, and Revelation, the first 4 verses of Revelation chapter 12. The wormwood is Planet X, as you said, and the red dragon of Revelation 12 is also Planet X. So there you have it from the highest authority. The Apostle John wrote on the Isle of Patmos is personally dictated by Jesus Christ himself. So you don't get any higher authority than that, and I believe Jesus said, my words, not one jot or tittle will pass away. So you can be absolutely guaranteed, if you're listening to this, no matter what anyone has told you, no matter what disinformation you may have been exposed to, or no matter what your level of knowledge is about the topic, that Planet X is absolutely real. It's in the Bible. It's in my opinion, a scientific, observable, provable fact. And the only question is the timing. And that's what I've been researching now for about 5 years. Augusto, I believe you've had some visions on this that exceed the 10-year point. So you've had insider knowledge, shall we say, of at least the impact damage, especially the impact damage and what it's going to consist of?
Yeah, absolutely. I have had a lot of visions, David, going back to the year 2005, or 4 or 5, somewhere around there. I was in Ohio, and I didn't know anything about Planet X back then, of course. I was totally, I had nothing. I had no knowledge, I had done no research. I had not seen anything, any books, read any books or any articles about that. And yet I had a very interesting vision one night when I was there. And that was, I saw what I described as the vision of the 3 stars. And I saw these 3 stars in the heavens, and they were kind of just dancing around there in the heavenlies. And out of the blue, they just started writing as if they were using the heavens as a blackboard. And they started writing in a very strange tongue, which I don't know what tongue it was. If I had to guess, I would guess it was Hebrew or a very ancient tongue. I just don't know. And as I began to see them writing in the heavenlies, I began to then realize that I was able to translate what they were writing. I was able to read what they were writing in this strange language. And as I continued to watch, I realized that they were talking about the end of times. The day of the Lord is what I like to describe it as, which is the beginning of the coming of the Messiah, which will usher us into the millennial kingdom. But that is called the day of the Lord, because the beginning of that transition is going to be very chaotic. It's going to be cataclysmic, which is what the book of Revelation describes, and as well as the book of Isaiah and many other books in the Bible describes the earth, going back and forth, shaking like a drunkard, reeling back and forth. And there's other scriptures that talk about the earth actually tilting on its axis and shifting. And, we never knew what that meant until recently, with when scientists have begun to talk about Planet X and what a celestial object of that magnitude could do to the Earth. So back in 2005, as I was watching the 3 stars riding on the heavenlies, all of a sudden I was sucked into the vision, and I was beginning to see horrible things happening. I began to see horrific earthquakes taking place. I began to see horrific disaster, cataclysmic events taking place in the country. The country was decimated. The United States was decimated. There was a tremendous hunger, a horrific hunger. People began to cannibalize each other. It was horrific, the things that I saw, tremendous persecution. I began to see the mark of the beast. I began to see the end times. It was the tribulation. I saw the tribulation. And the thing that I will never be able to get out of my mind is not those events as much as the pain, because I could not only see, I could not only hear, but I could also feel what the people were feeling, and I could feel their pain, and their pain was horrific. I could hear their screams and their pain, and it's something that I will never be able to forget. And so I saw these things back in 2004 or 5, somewhere around there, and I never figured out what that all meant, David, until I began to learn more about Planet X. Then I had other visions. The visions continued to come. I began to see this large object, which looked like a moon. It began to appear in many of my dreams, and I didn't know what that was. I began to have many other experiences like that. I began to see the red sun, the brown dwarf. I saw that as well in the distance. I had many experiences like that until recently, when I am beginning to see these things way closer. Now I see them way closer, much bigger, and I believe that these things are upon us. And there is an urgency in my heart to tell the people, to warn the people, because I know there's other people out there and they talk about it, but it seems like they are not really putting the emphasis that this topic deserves, because this is going to be a game changer. This is going to change the lives on this planet like we have never seen it. This is going to be way worse than a world war. This is going to be way worse than a financial collapse. This is going to be way over above everything that we could even imagine. This is going to be way worse than an EMP blast, because this is going to cause cataclysmic events the likes of which we have never seen. And so the people need to be prepared. The people need to be aware. People need to be prepared, first of all, spiritually, of course, because if they don't know Jesus Christ, then they're lost. There's going to be a lot of people's lives that are going to be lost, David. I saw massive amount of loss of life. And we know, you know as well as I do, that the whole East Coast, the West Coast, all the Gulf, all that area there, and in many parts of the world, I would say, 80, 90% of the population of the world lives close to the coast. So, and close to the bodies of water. And so when this event happens, it's going to be horrific. And so people need to know. People need to know. They need to be prepared. They need to be saved. They need to be made aware of this thing and how close it is. And so I just want to give you the opportunity, David, to share and continue sharing some of these things that you see coming and you have researched. I know that you sent me a very, very interesting material, Microsoft Excel, regarding the dates, and we'll talk about that later. We don't have to get into that, but this goes along with what I was sharing about the woman clothed with the sun. And, this year also happens to be a very important year. I don't know if you follow that, but this is the year of Jubilees. And this is not just any Jubilee. This is the 70th Jubilee since Joshua entered into the Promised Land. And this is also the 40th Jubilee since the coming of Messiah, Jesus Christ. So, and of course, and now you're saying that something of incredible importance will be happening within a year from this coming fall feasts. So go ahead, David, and continue to share on this very interesting subject.
Sure, Augusto. Of course, I agree with absolutely everything you've said. You've said it very eloquently, and in fact, you've done a very good 500-word synopsis of the whole tape for people that are not able to listen to all of it, but I hope they are, because you've touched on every key point. And one key point you've touched on is that the spiritual dimension is so important. Jesus himself said in the Matthew 24, the end-time discussion and so forth with the disciples, he said, your faith is going to save you. And so this is mostly a spiritual battle. These people that are left behind in the Great Tribulation, and I assume we're talking, when all of these events are happening, I believe at that point, at various points, we are somewhere within that 42-month, 3.5-year Great Tribulation period marked in the book of Revelation, where the New World Order system arises and the mark of the beast, which is basically, I believe, going to be sponsored by the United States. I have a friend out in California who has actually worked in the military in some of the underground facilities in Colorado, and there's more underground facilities in Colorado than any state, and there's hundreds and hundreds of arrays of Cray supercomputers and so forth. The New World Order system, I believe, will begin and will be initiated right here from within the United States, unfortunately. And so it's probably, in a way, if a person has missed the rapture, it's the most dangerous country to be in. You might make a better living on, in Fiji or somewhere else, or South Africa. The Russian Empire, very interestingly, under Putin, he is trying to restore it to its former glory. Of course, the man is a dictator, but he has some good attributes. And, Trump admires him, and he seems to admire Trump. I don't want to talk about politics, but Putin is a very interesting character. And I believe in Daniel chapter 11, he may be referred to as the king of the north. And I believe in Daniel 11, it says that the king of the north will fight with the king of the south during the Great Tribulation. Well, who is the king of the south? That's one topic I don't want to get into right now or during this conversation because of its tremendous implications. But I believe we may innately and instinctively know who that person may be. And that the king of the south refers to someone, in my opinion, using Jerusalem as a base for geography, who was born south of there, perhaps in Africa, perhaps in Hawaii, anywhere south of Jerusalem. So you've got the king of the north and the king of the south fighting during this great tribulation period, and I believe some of the visions you've had probably indicate some limited nuclear exchanges and so on and so forth that other people, even George Washington himself, had visions of. And Dmitry Duduman, he has had the same type of visions. Russia will attack America at some point, and it could be related to what happens in the Middle East. I know Putin has threatened to attack the United States if we in any way assist Israel in attacking Iran. And there's no telling what type of 22nd century generation devices that Russia has on loan with Iran. It could be a very dangerous country to attack. But, of course, the Bible states that they're going to get into it sometime during that Great Tribulation. And that's if you look at a risk matrix, that's probably one of the highest flashpoints for danger to the United States and Great Britain. But in any case, here's what the other videos are missing on Planet X. 95% of them are missing the spiritual aspect. And if you don't hit the spiritual aspect, you're really going to miss the whole picture. And there is a certain amount of physical preparation and mental preparation you need to do. We're not going to live out our lives as a normal generation, this generation. You look at Israel, the November 1947 vote to move it back as a nation in the United Nations. Well, that's all up in 2017. That's 70 years. If you look in the book of Daniel, 70 was a constant theme. Of course, you know this. It was a constant theme of the book of Daniel, which ties in with Revelation. And, in fact, it is, I believe, the length of a generation that Jesus referred to that said, when you see all these things come to pass. So 70 and 47 takes us right up to 2017. So I think we can tell just from general math, and I'm not talking Bible codes or anything like that, because that can get very complex and maybe even a little misleading, but I'm just talking from the general math and the words of Jesus in the Bible about a generation, 70 years, and you can expect to see everything at least begin in that year, which I believe is next year. So getting back to Revelation chapter 6, I believe Planet X may indeed be the cause of the blackening of the sun, quoted like sackcloth of hair, and the turning of the moon to blood. So an impact collision would cause an earthquake, and the reference to stars falling from the skies means meteorites. To sum up Revelation 6 in a few bullet points: 1, there was a great earthquake. 2, the sun became black as sackcloth of hair. 3, the moon became as blood. Now notice that the moon is blood red. This effect could be caused by the infrared light of a red dwarf star. There's a lot of very strange earth changes that are going on at this time, and just probably 80% of your listeners are aware of Planet X, but maybe for the 20% that aren't, just to give them a little background, according to various sites and solar research labs around the world, a very peculiar set of circumstances is upon us. Recent solar sunspot activity is the highest in 8,000 years. That's from space.com. There's a long-term increase in solar irradiance that's heating both the Earth and Mars. That's from the National Geographic. There's a 300% increase in galactic dust entering our solar system. That's from New Scientist. Venus is exhibiting a 2,500% increase in its green glow. Clouds and ozone have appeared in the Martian atmosphere. And according to the Keck Observatory in Hawaii, the once placid planet of Uranus is experiencing intense cloud activity, storms, and aurora. That's per the National Geographic. So a lot of this began back in the early 1980s. If you want to take a trip back memory lane there for a minute, let's look at the June 1982 edition of the New York Times. And it says something out there beyond their furthest reaches of the known solar system. It is tugging at Uranus and Neptune. A gravitational force keeps perturbing the two giant planets, causing irregularities in their orbits. This force suggests a presence far away and unseen, a large object, the long-sought Planet X. Astronomers are so certain of this planet's existence, they've already named it Planet X, the 10th planet. Now, apparently this announcement, and this came out in 2 or 3 other papers as well, Washington Post, all in 1982, 83. But the announcement of this discovery was unintentional, since very shortly thereafterwards, no comment or disinformation has been the policy since. NASA's had a lot of time to make a public statement, but remember, they're under a gag order to the NSA, the National Security Agency. They've all signed non-disclosure agreements, just like my stepfather. He couldn't say anything about the Kennedy autopsy, and they can't say anything about their current scenario. But internal NASA studies since the 1983 region indicate, in my opinion, they're fully aware of a Planet X type of object coming in from the direction of the South Pole, south of the ecliptic. Amateur astronomers cannot track it, but under the right atmospheric conditions and locations, it has been observable by random chance. I've analyzed a couple of videos and photos in my book, Planet X, the 2017 Arrival, and they are quite real. Now, Dr. Harrington, the former head of the U.S. Naval Observatory, took an 8-inch telescope, 20-centimeter astrograph, to New Zealand in '91, and he'd been quoted by The Independent in 1990, and he says the most remarkable feature predicted for Planet X is that its orbit is tilted 30 degrees away from the ecliptic, which is the main plane of the solar system, where all previous searches have concentrated. Now, 3 years after that, in 1993, he died under mysterious conditions right before he made a public statement. So part of the discovery of Planet X was based on the fact that outer large planets were being pulled down in their orbital patterns. The X system is the only effect which could cause such a perturbation in their orbits. It's best viewed close to the South Pole. That's, of course, the reason for the South Pole telescope, an investment of billions of dollars. It was operational in March of 2007. Why not just rely on observations from a Chilean observatory? Well, that's the reason. So that's a little bit on the history of Planet X. If you want to talk a little bit about the evidence of Planet X for a few minutes.
As you were sharing, I was listening, David, and in Revelation chapter 6, and let me just share this for the people out there that maybe have never heard about this, maybe are not familiar with the scriptures as it relates to this this celestial object that is approaching. In Revelation 6, chapter 12, it says, "And I beheld, and he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake." Now, that word there, great earthquake, is pretty interesting, people, and you need to understand that the word there, great, is mega. That is actually the word used in the original Greek, is a mega earthquake. This is, we're not talking here about a 7.0 earthquake, or even an 8.0, or even a 9. 9 is is very large, and it was a 9.0 earthquake, the one that triggered the Japan tsunami a few years ago. And so, this is talking about a mega earthquake. Maybe we're talking, I don't know, maybe a 10.0, a 10-pointer, or maybe 11 or greater. And so this is a huge, a massive earthquake. And then he talks about that in verse 12, that the sun became black as a sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. Like you explained, David, I totally agree with that. I believe this will be because of the effects of Planet X. I don't know exactly how, scientifically speaking, that will happen. I have heard some theories out there that could, basically sharing that this would cause the Earth to, or the sun to turn black, complete the darkness. I have had a vision, by the way, of the coming darkness where everything turned dark. I mean, no light whatsoever. I'm not talking about just power, okay? The power outage. No, this was total absence of light. No stars, no moon, nothing, no light, nothing, zero. And so I don't know if you have written about that, David, or you researched about that, but if you have, I would maybe like you to shed some light on that. Also, the fact that when it says here in verse 13 that the stars of heaven fell onto the earth, even as a fig tree casts its unripe figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Of course, that it's talking about the meteors that are going to start falling upon the earth. Of course, this object, or actually, if we can call it this mini solar system, is dragging huge amounts of debris in its tail, and also is pushing it in front of it. So we see that large amounts of debris are being pushed by this object, and then behind it is being dragged. And also, so this is going to cause a massive amount of meteors, meteorites, asteroids falling upon the earth. And then it says in verse 14 that the heavens departed as a scroll when it is rolled together. And every a mountain and island were moved out of their places. Now, I have heard a couple of theories here, David, and I would like to also get your input on this. Of course, this has everything to do with the pole shift, but it also could have something to do with the magnetosphere. When the magnetosphere collapses, the effect of it on what we are going to see from down here on planet Earth, it could be something very similar to that, as like a scroll rolling together. And so, and then it goes on in verse 15 to talk about everybody, the presidents, the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the generals, and the mighty men, hiding themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. Now, people, you need to understand, this was written way back. Whenever this book was written, that was maybe 95, I think it was 94, 95, 96 AD, somewhere around there, and it may vary. Some people say it was in different dates, but around that time, when John the Revelator, the Apostle John, wrote this book. And back then he didn't know, about underground, shelters. He didn't know about, DUMBs, DUMBs, deep underground military bunkers. He didn't know anything about this. And so right after that is the appearance of the Lord. And it says that they said to the mountains and to the rocks, fall on us, hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath has come, and who shall be able to stand? Now, here, people, he's talking about the day of the Lord, the day of his wrath. Throughout the scriptures, whenever, we read scriptures, it talks about the day of the Lord, and we also see it is also always related, the day of the Lord is always related to God's wrath, when God pours out his wrath upon the evil and the inhabitants of the earth. And this is where I believe, David, that God separates his people, the evil from the righteous. And I do believe that the righteous, the seed of God, the remnant, the elect, those that are saved, washed by his blood, will not be partakers of the wrath of the Lamb, of this part. We will partake, and we are partaking of the wrath of the devil, of the wrath of evil men on the earth, of diseases, wars, persecution. People are being beheaded right now as we speak. But this is different. This is different, and this is what we need to understand. This is the wrath of God, the wrath of the Lamb. And I believe, and I think you share with me the same feeling, David, that his bride, the bride of Jesus Christ, will not be a partaker of the wrath of the Lamb. And that is what this is all about, isn't it?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Now, we don't know when the rapture is going to happen, right before the Great Tribulation, right at the beginning of it, towards the end of it, in the middle of it. We don't know exactly the day. No one knows the exact 24-hour time span. But it is going to, we know the rapture will happen. It's guaranteed. And the purpose is to remove, what's called the Philadelphia church from the earth. And a lot of the other churches remain, as you say, because they need to be further tested and so forth. But and they sure will be during that 3.5 years or whatever portion of it they have to go through. Now, what you said earlier regarding what's going to create a lot of these situations is, I think part of it's what's called the kill shot scenario. In other words, we're talking here an X-60 solar flare leaping from the sun when Planet X approaches. The coronal mass ejection heads straight towards the Earth. What will happen? How much warning will we have? And this type of event may be our first overt sign of the nearness of the approach of X. A CME is a slow-moving cloud of charged particles. It's accompanied by an X-ray burst. Both have devastating effects. The X-ray burst will travel at the speed of light, and will reach the Earth's surface in 8 minutes. And when these X-rays hit, they will affect all Earth-orbiting satellites that are in line of sight. So you'll have GPS communications going down and communication satellites going down. This would be a first warning and an obvious signal to the group of people who happen to be watching. And then the second would be 3 to 4 days later, the CME, and that would cause transformers, which operate with copper wiring, to heat up and overload, and as design capacity is overloaded, of course, they burn up. And here's a real interesting question. Almost a cosmic joke. What happens to the 440 nuclear power reactors? Well, most reactors require electricity to operate in the cooling systems, and huge levels of radioactive fuel, of course, are on site. Cooling on a continuous basis is the only way to prevent a meltdown. So you've got a smaller level, I would call it an apocalyptic scenario here, that's almost guaranteed, because if the reactor cores are not continuously cooled, you'll have a reactor core meltdown and fires in storage ponds for, spent fuel rods. That's the imminent result. So in other words, with a widespread grid collapse, in just hours after the backup, generators fail or run short of fuel, the reactor cores melt down. Then within a couple of days without electricity, the water bath over the spent fuel rods boils away and the stored fuel rods melt down and burn. Now, keep this in mind. Transformers are made to order. They're custom designed. They weigh about 300 tons. They cost more than $1 million. And there's a 3-year waiting list for a single transformer due to recent demand from China and India. So you can begin to grasp the implications of widespread transformer losses. Now, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission does have a week supply of backup generator fuel at each reactor site. So the public will have 1 week to prepare for the meltdowns. And so that's something very, very interesting and on point. There's a fellow named Major Ed Dames who was part of a CIA Pentagon jointly sponsored project involving remote viewing. Now, personally, I don't agree with that, but it's pretty interesting. He stated that this project saw the end of days as being tied to a series of major solar flares over a 1-year period, and Earth was totally unprepared. And in a recent interview, he was asked whether Planet X or Nibiru may have been the cause, and he said he wasn't certain, but it was very probable. And one of his callers on the program made a very interesting observation. It was at the 11-minute, 50-second segment, and he raised a very interesting point. He stated he's with the military, and he ran across a document a few months ago, partly classified, partly unclassified, of a very large object moving through space towards the Earth. But the weird thing about it is that it's changing speed, it's changing vectors, every aspect on a daily basis, and they can't get a handle on it. So that raises the question, is Planet X under God's control? The military seems to know about it. Serious researchers know about it, and the world is drifting along. And the question is, are the listeners prepared?
Amen. Well, you touched a very interesting topic there about the fact that it is speeding up. The Planet X is speeding up, slowing down. There have been people that have had different takes on that. Of course, I have the book. I don't know if you've read the book or even know about the book by Doug Elwell. He wrote a book, and we reviewed him last year, Planet X, The Sign of the Son of Man. Very, very interesting take on that topic. Of course, I don't agree with all of his, of his thesis, because he believes it comes every 1,000 years or 2,000 years. And I tend to agree with the fact that the other theory that it comes every 3,600 years or so, plus or minus, because it ties it in with the Exodus. It ties it in with Noah's flood and so forth. But one of the things that he says that really struck my spirit, and I believe that there's some truth to it, is the fact that he says Planet X is God's hammer, that he uses it to punish the inhabitants of the earth, every so often. Basically, he uses it to do, as a reset button. Whenever the planet, the inhabitants, has gotten out of hand, and that's what happened during the flood, when the man began to, messing with the DNA. They began, the fallen angels began cohabiting with the daughters of men, and giants were born unto them. And of course, in the book of Enoch, they go into detail about that, and the book of Jasher and many other books, which are not in the Bible, but they are, what I called non-canonical books, but they are mentioned in the Bible. Like the book of Enoch is mentioned in the Bible, is quoted verbatim in the book of Jude. He quotes a passage verbatim from the book of Jude, and there's no way that Jude would have known that, except he had a copy of the book of Enoch in his shelf, in his library. The same with Jasher. It's mentioned in, I believe, it's in the book of Chronicles. And so, these books, although they're not in the Bible, they're mentioned in the Bible. So I do believe they bear some weight. Maybe not as literal word from God, but they are books that I use for research. I use to confirm the Bible, and they both talk about the destruction of the planet. It talks about how the fallen angels came down to earth, cohabiting with the sons of men. And when this happened, the condition on the earth was very similar to what we are seeing today. We are seeing a lot of manipulation with the DNA. We are seeing men beginning to tamper with the human genome. They're beginning to create life, hybrids, crossing animals and people, and this is a no-no in the eyes of the Lord. He just will not allow that. He will not allow his blueprint of creation to be destroyed, contaminated. So we see that happening now, as it was in the days of Noah, just like Scripture says. As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. So we see that happening. And also during the Exodus, we saw similar things happen that we read about in the book of Revelation, like, the darkness, one of the plagues. We saw the water turn to blood in the river Nile, which, by the way, has already happened in recent times, in the last few years. The waters have turned like blood color in the Nile, and in other parts of the world, we are seeing massive amounts of plagues and all kinds of things. So we are seeing this repeated. And if we study the ancient manuscripts, we also see that during the Exodus, in the Egyptian manuscripts, we see that they saw an object in the sky that they, I believe they called it dome shape or dome shape, and so they call it also, the destroyer. And so we read this in the not in the Bible, but although in the Bible it says about the destroyer, And in the book of Exodus, it specifically says the destroyer passed that night when, all the firstborn were killed. So there's a lot of interesting passages of Scripture. But anyway, going back to what I was sharing about the Planet X slowing down that you mentioned, David, and then speeding up, I do believe it is under the control of the Lord. And then there's another theory, too, that it is also one of those planets could be inhabited by the Anunnaki, which maybe people believe in them, maybe they don't believe. But let me just share this, and that is that the word Anunnaki, although it is not in the Bible exactly like that, the Bible does mention the Anakims, and it mentions the sons of Anak, the giant. And so the word Anakim, which is a kind of a close, it sounds similar to Anunnaki, Anakim, it sounds similar. I believe they are the same entities. The Anakims and the Anunnaki, those were the ones that were here when Moses when the Lord sent Moses and Joshua to conquer the Promised Land. They reported that there were giants on the land. They saw the giants there, the Anakims, and thus the Anunnaki. So that is another theory, David, that people can take it or leave it, but it is nevertheless another theory that one of these planets, at least one of them, it is inhabited by these kinds of beings, and so it is going to be a very interesting thing, because I do believe that this object, whenever it comes close to planet Earth, like it did during the Exodus, it caused tremendous upheavals and tremendous cataclysmic events. But I believe this time around is going to be way worse than it was during the Exodus, and probably it's going to be a little closer, or maybe even worse than it was when the great flood of Noah's day took place.
Right. Well, I've heard of that gentleman's book and that gentleman. I haven't read the book. I'm sure it's a good book. Now, you're right about increased activity, Earth changes. Look at volcanic activity that's due to Nibiru as it approaches our solar system. Of course, it causes a shift in tectonic plates. Polar ice caps melt, and you've got increased temperature. The increased temperatures in the oceans and atmosphere are the primary cause, I believe, of polar ice caps melting. Al Gore's global warming theory, I just don't believe it at all. Now, but you get back to problems with volcanoes. I looked the other day at the volcano discovery site just to get an update. And just for comparison purposes, in the most recent 24 hours, there have been more than 100 earthquakes. But now, talking about volcanoes, the volcano discovery site maps all current active volcanoes. And just in the last 24 hours, or the day before yesterday when I happened to look, there was one erupting in Europe in the Aeolian Islands of Italy. Of course, we know what happened. 6.2 happened there at the end of August and destroyed the entire city. But there were that was an earthquake, though, not a volcano. There were 3 volcanoes in Africa, 6 in Indonesia, 7 in Mexico, 6 in South America, 1 in Antarctica, 1 in Hawaii, 2 in the Pacific, 1 in Vanuatu, and 4 in the Ring of Fire, which is the Kuril Islands to the Philippines. So that's a total of 32 active, and another 36 are listed with an eruption warning, or in other words, current activity. So that totals 68 volcanoes right now active or about to erupt. One of the most dangerous is not Yellowstone, even though that has some elements of danger to it, but one is the Long Valley caldera in California. And for your listeners, of course, a caldera is a cauldron-like volcanic feature on large central volcanoes. And it can be several kilometers in diameter. It's formed when a magma chamber was emptied. And the depression then originates in a very large explosive eruption. And that's one of the most, it's very active. And it could probably destroy California from San Francisco south all the way to San Diego, plus some neighboring states, if it erupts. And when it erupts, when Planet X comes in our vicinity. So just to talk a little bit, too, just for your listeners' general edification, in terms of the Vatican, as you know, the Vatican's in a very strange business. It owns a large binocular telescope in Arizona on Mount Graham near Tucson. It's near infrared, The cover story is they're looking for extrasolar planets, advanced alien intelligence, and so forth. It's chilled to minus 213 Celsius so that it can conduct near-infrared observations. And, of course, Planet X is a dwarf star, a binary twin to our sun, and is only observed really in this spectrum. Now, why all of this interest by the Vatican? What are they really interested in? So I'm sure you've heard of Father Malachi, a Vatican insider. He knew about an inbound planet. And he said it would appear between 2015 and 2025. He said the exact date's a secret, hidden in the archives of the Vatican. I think he was a professor of paleontology at the Pontifical Biblical Institute of the Vatican, and he criticized the Vatican for not releasing the full content of what was called the Third Secret of Fatima in 1917. Some presumption is, well, the Vatican didn't want everybody to know the facts about wormwood. So he interviewed Art Bell, I believe, on national radio, and he was asked why the Vatican was so involved in the exploration of deep space. And he said, because the mentality amongst those who are at the highest levels of Vatican administration and geopolitics know what's going on in space, what is approaching it. And I've heard another Vatican insider stated that the Graham Observatory in Arizona is used to study anomalous celestial bodies approaching the Earth. He compared it to what the CIA did with one of its secret eyes, which was called the twin to Hubble, Skyhole 12 or Keto 12. And he stated during an Alaskan radio telescope monitoring of a deep space probe called Silo, a photograph had been taken of a huge planet moving closer inbound to our system. This was way back in the mid-90s. He said the information was above top secret. And he said the probe was created in Area 51 with an EMP motor put in orbit by a space plane. And its purpose was to approach Planet X and transmit information back to the radio telescope. So you've got the Vatican. They've got a secret intelligence agency named the SIV, and this stands for Information Service of the Vatican in English. And the fact is that the Vatican's telescope and its twin are the focus points of the LBT's two giant 28-foot diameter telescope mirrors, each one cooled to minus 351 Fahrenheit, in order to observe something in the near-infrared wavelength range. So this is very serious. You know, the Vatican is aware.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely. The Vatican is aware, and not only are they aware of it, I believe, David, they are a part of what's going to happen. I do believe that they play an integral part of the coming new world order system. It is no coincidence that there is a huge obelisk standing right there in front of the St. Peter's Cathedral there in Rome, just like there's one right here in front of the U.S. Capitol, with a reflective pool, which is totally Masonic and totally occultic. These things are definitely symbols and powerful symbols of the magic that these people do, and they believe in, and so I do see the Vatican intricately connected. I believe the Vatican is the mystery Babylon, although there's people that may disagree with that, and they think that the mystery Babylon is the U.S. I don't agree with that. I believe that the U.S. may be a part of that world Babylonish system. And but in the Bible, always mystery Babylon, the woman is always shared and always symbolized as a type of the bride of Christ or a prostitute. And so whenever we read the Bible and we see a woman being shown in a dream or a vision or any such thing like that, or a parable, it always has to do with a type of the bride of Jesus Christ, a bride of the Lamb, or a harlot. And that is why, and that's exactly what the Bible calls it in Revelation, in Revelation 17, I believe it is, Babylon the harlot, the mother of harlots. Okay, so we know the Catholic Church is not just the harlot; it is the mother of harlots. There's a lot of other churches that also are committing fornication with the kings of the earth. But I do believe that the Pope is going to be very, very connected to everything that is going to happen soon. They're already preparing the way for the coming of extraterrestrials, saying that they may, first saying that they're going to baptize them, and then saying, no, they should baptize us. Comments like that because they're supposed to be superior beings. And, of course, these things tell us that they are going to be a big part of this, coming world government, where these entities, the Anunnaki, these fallen angels, are going to rule together with mankind on the earth, with these people, and that's what I believe that they believe with all their hearts that they're going to be, right at the top of the pyramid, in the government, ruling with these fallen angels and Anunnaki and what have you. And so there is all kinds of things going on, but going back to what you were sharing, David, and we're going to take a break in a few moments here, but there's something here about that I want you to share about the 7 stars and the return of Planet X. And, there's a lot here that people, really not many people talk about. Some people allude to it and mention it, but they don't talk about. I think it was back in 2010, 2011, I began to realize, I got that revelation that this woman that was dressed with with the glory of the sun, with the brightness of the sun, and with the 12 stars on her head and the moon under her feet, and then the dragon. I just knew in my spirit that this was not what people and theologians were saying it was. I knew there was something deeper here. And when I began to find out the details about Planet X, and I began to realize that he had other planets, that Nemesis had other planets orbiting around it, one of them, which is Planet X, Nibiru. There are others like Helion, and then it has a little moon around it, which is called Harrington. And then it has another planet called Arboda, and Nibiru even has another moon. And, all of these planets, I believe that they total 7 orbiting around this dragon. I just began to see that in the scriptures, where the dragon had 7 heads. And, of course, people have always referred to the dragon as the devil, and he is a symbol of Satan. But I do believe, David, that there's something here about that connects this to Planet X and to the destroyers. Other people call it Hercules. But this object is so terrifying that it looks like a dragon when it is in the sky, with a tail and everything, and with the wings. And I do believe you have something to share about that. So we're going to take a short break now. And when we come back, I want you to just jump into that and talk to us about that. But let's hear this song during the break, and we'll be right back. Don't go away. This is Augusto Perez with Appearance Radio, and my guest today is David Meade. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to the Appearance Radio. I am Augusto Perez. And today we're interviewing David Meade, and he's been sharing some interesting things. He has a book out on dealing with Planet X and what is up ahead in the year 2017 and beyond. So we'll be sharing his contact information at the end of the program. But David, why don't you take some time at this time and share with the people the research, what you found out about this approaching object. As we were doing the break, I was just thinking about some of these things and the Scripture and how throughout the Scripture also, it refers to Jesus Christ and connects them to the bright and the morning star, and also the day star, and it so many scriptures like in Revelation chapter 22, verse 16, where it talks about the bright and the morning star. In Revelation chapter 2, also verse 26 and 28, it talks about when to him that overcomes, he says, I will give him the morning star. And so many scriptures in 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 19. He talks about, it says, we have a more sure word of prophecy to which you do well that you take heed, as unto a light that shines in a dark place, until the day dawn and the day star arise in your heart. So we see a lot of this mentioned in scriptures, David, about Jesus Christ, the bright and morning star, the day star. And, I can't help but think that this object, this dwarf sun, this second sun, has something to do with the appearance of Jesus Christ and with the coming of the Lord. Of course, to us, it's going to be our redemption. But to those that are not His, it's going to mean destruction. Can you share a little bit about this and what your research has revealed to you?
Sure. Well, in fact, on the back of my print book, you were talking about the 7 stars. I'll just read this paragraph from the top back of my print book. There is no hiding this incoming solar system any longer. It consists of a dark star, smaller than our sun, which hosts 7 orbiting bodies, some smaller than our moon, and a couple of them larger than our Earth. The dark star is called Nemesis, or Planet X. The blue planet is called the blue Kachina. The planet that is larger than Earth, that is orbiting the dark star, is called Nibiru. It is also known as the planet of the crossing and the destroyer. There is another object, some refer to it as Helion. And so when we talk about Revelation 12, which I'd like to recap and get into in just a few minutes, I hope your listeners are sitting down, because I don't think this has really been widely distributed. I don't know if anyone else has done extensive analysis on it, because I believe this information that I have in the book and that I can speak of in person indicates, back in Genesis, God said,